I inherited my grandfather's cabin and a war I never asked for. Patricia Whitmore, HOA president, red dress, blonde bob, told me I owed $15,000 immediately or she'd foreclose. She smiled like she'd already won. My grandfather's cabin, built in 1947, about to be stolen by some entitled HOA tyrant. I went to the county clerk to fight back. What I found made my blood stop. My grandfather secretly bought the land underneath 92% of her neighborhood in 1978. The homeowners didn't know. The HOA didn't know. Patricia didn't know. This woman-threatening MY cabin had been living on MY land for 40 years without permission. She tried to steal my property. She had no idea I could demolish hers with one legal document. Watch until the end. The courtroom scene where she loses everything is absolutely devastating. Comment where you're watching from. Let's see how many people have survived HOA hell. The envelope was waiting on the porch when I arrived. I didn't see it at first. I was too busy staring at the cabin, my grandfather's cabin, sitting there like a memory made of wood and glass. The blue paint was faded. The dock leaned slightly toward the water, but it was still standing. Still home, 3 weeks since we buried him, 3 weeks since I stood in that cemetery and promised I'd take care of this place. I grabbed my toolbox from the truck. The keys felt heavy in my hand. 60 years of Morrison family history in a single piece of brass. I was about to unlock the door when I saw it. A white envelope taped to the doorframe, my name printed across the front in cold, corporate font. I tore it open. Cease and desist. The words hit me like a punch to the chest. Dear Mr. Morrison, you are hereby notified that the property located at 2847 Lakeshore Drive falls under the jurisdiction of the Pine Ridge Homeowners Association. Your grandfather, William Morrison, repeatedly refused to comply with community standards and regulations. As the new property owner, you are required to immediately. The letter went on for 3 pages. $15,000 in back dues. 47 pages of restrictions attached. Violations for dock condition, exterior paint color, unapproved landscaping, and failure to submit architectural review applications. My hands started shaking. I'd inherited a cabin, not a war, but apparently someone disagreed. There was a phone number at the bottom. I pulled out my cell and dialed. 2 rings, then a woman's voice, cold, clipped, efficient. Pine Ridge HOA, Patricia Whitmore speaking. This is Jake Morrison. I just received, Mr. Morrison, I've been expecting your call. Her tone made my skin crawl, like she'd been waiting for this moment, planning it. Look, I just inherited this property. My grandfather never mentioned an HOA. I don't understand what. Your grandfather was a difficult man, Mr. Morrison. He believed rules didn't apply to him. He ignored our letters. He refused to attend meetings. He turned that beautiful lakefront property into an eyesore that damaged everyone's property values. I looked at the cabin, the dock my grandfather built with his own hands. The pine trees he planted when my father was born. This place isn't an eyesore. It's a violation of 17 separate community standards. Patricia cut me off. And now it's your problem. You have 30 days to pay the dues and bring the property into compliance, or we begin foreclosure proceedings. The word hit me like ice water. Foreclosure? You can't just. We absolutely can, Mr. Morrison. It's all in the covenants, which your grandfather signed in 1985. That's impossible. He would have told me, 30 days, Mr. Morrison, the clock is ticking. She hung up. I stood there on the porch, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to dead air. The lake was so quiet, just the sound of water lapping against the shore, the smell of pine and cedar, everything that made this place sacred. And someone was trying to take it. I looked down at the letter again, at the name printed at the top. Patricia Whitmore, HOA president. I didn't know it then, couldn't have known. But Patricia Whitmore had just made the biggest mistake of her life. Because my grandfather didn't just own a cabin, he owned something else. Something buried in county records for 40 years. Something that was about to flip this entire situation upside down. The war had begun. And I was about to discover I had more ammunition than anyone could imagine. The community center smelled like burnt coffee and floor wax. I pushed through the double doors at exactly 7 p.m. Folding chairs arranged in neat rows. 20 residents scattered throughout, all of them staring at me like I'd just walked into church during the sermon. At the front table sat Patricia Whitmore, mid-50s. Blonde bob cut sharp as a razor, pink blazer pressed within an inch of its life, pearl necklace that probably cost more than my truck. Her hands were folded on the table. Perfectly manicured nails, wedding ring catching the fluorescent light. She looked up when I entered, her smile could have cut glass. Mr. Morrison, she stood slowly, heels clicking on the linoleum like a countdown. How gracious of you to finally join us. Every word dripped with contempt. I walked to the front, kept my voice steady. I'm here to discuss the letter you sent. There's nothing to discuss. The terms were quite clear. I just inherited this property 3 weeks ago. I don't understand what I supposedly owe or why. Patricia's smile vanished. Your grandfather was a stubborn, selfish man who thought rules didn't apply to him. She said it loud enough for everyone to hear. He spent 40 years thumbing his nose at this community, letting his property deteriorate while the rest of us maintained standards. I assume the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. The room went silent. My jaw tightened. Stay calm. Don't let her get to you. I just want to understand the situation, that's all. Patricia slid a document across the table. The pages hit the wood with a slap. $15,000 itemized here. Back dues from 1985 to present, plus immediate compliance with all architectural standards. I picked up the document, scanned the list, repaint the cabin approved colors only. Remove the dock structure violates setback requirements. Replace all windows current style not period appropriate. Remove 3 oak trees unapproved landscaping. My grandfather planted those trees when I was born. This is insane, I said quietly. That dock is historic. My grandfather built it in 1952. Those trees are violations. Patricia leaned forward, her eyes were ice. Everything about that property is a violation. And you have 14 days to fix it. You said 30 days on the phone. I changed my mind. She said it with a smile, like watching me squirm gave her physical pleasure. An older woman in the third row raised her hand. Patricia, maybe we could work out a payment plan. The young man just lost his grandfather. Margaret, this doesn't concern you. Patricia didn't even look at her. I put the document down, looked Patricia directly in the eye. And if I don't comply, Patricia stood, walked around the table, stopped 3 feet from me, close enough that I could smell her perfume, something expensive and sharp. Then we foreclose, Mr. Morrison, we take the property. We auction it off, and you lose everything your grandfather built. Her voice dropped lower, colder. We have the legal authority, we have the documentation, and we have a very expensive law firm on retainer who would love nothing more than to make an example out of you. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Someone in the back coughed. A chair scraped. I looked around the room, at the faces watching this play out. Some looked uncomfortable, some looked away, but nobody spoke up. Patricia had them all terrified. She stepped back, smoothed her blazer. Her smile returned. 14 days, Mr. Morrison, I suggest you start packing. I walked out of that community center shaking with rage, but something else too, determination. Because Patricia Whitmore just showed me exactly who she was, and I was about to show her who I was. Tomorrow, I'd go to the county clerk's office. I'd find out what my grandfather really left me. And I had a feeling it was going to change everything. The county clerk's office smelled like old paper and decades of bureaucracy, brick building on Main Street, fluorescent lights humming overhead. A woman at the front desk, nameplate said Mary, looked up when I walked in. Help you? I need property records, everything you have on 2847 Lakeshore Drive and the Pine Ridge subdivision. Something flickered in her eyes. Recognition, the Morrison property, she stood up. You're Jake, I nodded. Mary's expression softened. Your grandfather was a good man. I was sorry to hear about his passing. Thank you, but right now I need to understand what I'm dealing with. The HOA is threatening foreclosure and say no more. Mary disappeared into a back room. I heard file cabinets opening, boxes being moved. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Finally, she emerged carrying 3 cardboard boxes. Dust coating the tops. Everything we have, she said, dating back to 1947. I spread the documents across a research table, started digging. The original deed came first, 1947. William Morrison purchases 240 acres of raw lakefront property for $2,800. My grandfather was 23 years old. I kept reading. 1963. A developer named James Hartwell approaches my grandfather, wants to buy the land, build a subdivision. My grandfather refuses. 1964. Hartwell builds anyway, Pine Ridge subdivision. 47 houses arranged in a crescent around the lake, but there's a problem. The only access to the water is through Morrison property. 1965. An easement agreement. My grandfather grants the subdivision access to the lake for their boat launch, but I read the fine print. The easement is conditional, time-limited, revocable under specific circumstances. Duration 30 years. Which means it expired in 1995, 30 years ago. Nobody renewed it. My heart started pounding. Every house in Pine Ridge has been using my family's land illegally for 3 decades, but there was more. I found another document, 1978, a quitclaim deed. James Hartwell's development company goes bankrupt. The county auctions off the remaining assets, including something called underlying land parcels. Pine Ridge Phase II, purchased by William Morrison, price $8,400. I stared at the document, read it 3 times to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. Mary, my voice came out hoarse. What does this mean? Underlying land parcels, she came over, read the deed, her eyes went wide. Oh my God. What? Jake, in the 60s and 70s, some developers would sell houses but retain ownership of the land beneath them, like a ground lease. The homeowners thought they owned everything, but technically the developers still owned the dirt. And my grandfather bought that from the bankruptcy auction. Apparently, my hands were shaking. How much of the subdivision? Mary pulled out a survey map, started tracing boundaries with her finger. If this is accurate, probably 90%, maybe more. The room tilted. I sat down hard. So the people living in Pine Ridge, they don't actually own their land. Not if this deed is valid, they own the structures, but your grandfather and now you own what's underneath. I thought about Patricia Whitmore, her threats. Her smug smile, she had no idea. None of them did. Mary, I need a real estate attorney, the best one you know. She wrote down a name. David Brennan. I called him from the parking lot, explained the situation. He told me to come to his office immediately. Bring everything. 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from David's desk, watching him read through the documents, his eyes getting wider with every page. Finally, he looked up. Jake, do you understand what you have here? I shook my head. David leaned back, steepled his fingers. You own the land rights to approximately 92% of the Pine Ridge subdivision. Most of those homeowners think they own their property outright, but technically, legally, they're living on your land. The words didn't feel real. My grandfather never told anyone. Apparently not, he just let them live there. Never exercised his rights, never caused trouble. I thought about that, about my grandfather's quiet strength, his integrity. He could have destroyed that neighborhood anytime he wanted. He chose peace instead, but now. Now Patricia Whitmore was trying to take everything from me. What are my options? I asked. David's smile was sharp. Well, first, that HOA has zero authority over you. They're operating on your property without permission. You're not a member, you don't owe them a dime. And second, we inform them of the situation politely, professionally, and we make them understand that they need to back off immediately. I nodded slowly. What happens to the homeowners? That's up to you. You could demand they vacate, you could charge rent, or, he paused, you could be like your grandfather, offer them a fair deal. Sell them the land rights at a reasonable price. Everyone walks away whole. I already knew what I'd do. I wasn't my grandfather, but I could honor his legacy. Draft the letter, I said, professional, polite, but make it crystal clear. David grinned. This is going to be fun. The letter went out 3 days later. I imagined Patricia Whitmore opening her mailbox, seeing the law firm's return address, reading the first paragraph, realizing her entire world just collapsed. My phone rang 2 hours after delivery. It was Patricia, and she was screaming. Patricia's voice came through the phone like a chainsaw. You're trying to steal our homes. I pulled the phone away from my ear, put it on speaker. Let her scream. Miss Whitmore, if you'd actually read the letter. I read it, it's fraud, it's a scam, those documents are fake. I stayed calm, kept my voice level. Everything in that letter is verified by the county, public record. You can check it yourself. You can't just claim you own our land, that's not how property law works. Actually, it is. My grandfather purchased the underlying rights in 1978, legal sale, legal deed. All properly recorded. Silence, but I could hear her breathing, fast and shallow. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. Lower, more dangerous. This is extortion. No, this is me offering a solution. The letter explains it clearly. I'll grant permanent easements. I'll sell the land rights back to the homeowners at the original purchase price, adjusted for inflation. Everyone wins. Everyone wins, everyone wins. Her voice climbed again. You want hundreds of thousands of dollars. I want $8,400 adjusted for inflation. Split between 47 properties, that's about $3,000 per house. For land they should have owned outright 40 years ago. More silence. You have 1 week to respond, I said quietly. After that, the offer expires. I'll see you in court. The line went dead. I set the phone down. My hands were steady, my heart was racing, but I felt something else too, control. For the first time since this started, I had control. David Brennan called me an hour later. She hung up on you, didn't she? How'd you know? Because she just called me, screaming about fraud and extortion and how we'll never win in court. What'd you tell her? I told her we have 40 years of documentation, 3 independent property surveys, and statements from 2 title companies confirming everything. Then I told her to have a nice day and hung up. I laughed, first time in weeks. Think she'll take the deal? David's voice went serious. No, she's not going to take the deal, she's going to escalate. How? I don't know yet. But people like Patricia Whitmore don't lose gracefully. They burn everything down on their way out. He was right. 3 days later, I was at the cabin working on the dock when I heard vehicles approaching. 3 black SUVs, expensive. Tinted windows. They parked in a line across my driveway, blocking me in. Men in suits climbed out, 5 of them corporate types, polished shoes and power ties. One of them walked forward, 50-something, silver hair. Smile that didn't reach his eyes. Mr. Morrison, Marcus Webb, I represent Summit Holdings. I put down my hammer, wiped my hands. Never heard of you. We're a real estate investment firm. We'd like to make you an offer. I'm not selling. Marcus's smile didn't waver. You haven't heard the offer yet. The last SUV door opened. Patricia Whitmore stepped out, red dress today, hair perfect, sunglasses hiding her eyes. She stood behind Marcus, arms crossed. Watching, Marcus pulled out a folder, handed it to me. $800,000 cash, we close in 30 days, you walk away free and clear. I didn't open the folder. What happens to the homeowners? That would be our concern, not yours. I looked at Patricia. She lifted her sunglasses, met my eyes, there was triumph there like she'd already won. I understood immediately, Summit would buy my property. Evict the homeowners. Redevelop the entire area into luxury condos, probably double their money in 5 years. And Patricia had negotiated some kind of side deal, probably a fat commission, maybe a luxury unit for herself. She was selling out her own neighbors. No, I said, Marcus's smile finally cracked. Mr. Morrison, this is an extremely generous offer. I said no, you should reconsider carefully. There was a threat in his voice now, subtle but real. I'm not interested, please leave. Patricia stepped forward, her face was twisted with rage. You're going to regret this, her voice shook. We will bury you in legal fees, we will drag this out for years. We will make your life absolute hell, you'll lose everything trying to fight us. I looked at her, this woman in her perfect red dress, her expensive jewelry, so willing to destroy 47 families for money. Get off my property. This isn't over, she screamed. You have no idea what's coming. Marcus put a hand on her arm, guided her back to the SUV. The men climbed in, engines started. As they drove away, Patricia rolled down her window, looked back at me. Her expression was pure hatred. I stood there in the driveway long after they left. David was right. Patricia wasn't going to take the deal, she was going to war. And I had no idea how dirty she was willing to fight. The harassment started that night. I woke up to the sound of running water, not from inside the cabin, from underneath. I pulled on boots and grabbed a flashlight, went around back. My water line was cut, clean sliced through the copper pipe, water pooling in the dirt. Someone had been here while I was sleeping. I shut off the main valve, called a plumber, cost me $400 to fix. No proof, no witnesses, but I knew. 2 days later, all 4 tires on my truck were slashed. I came out at dawn to drive to work, saw my truck sitting crooked in the driveway, rubber shredded, rims touching gravel, another $800. I called the sheriff. Deputy Miller came out, took a report, shook his head. Probably kids. We get vandalism out here sometimes. This isn't kids. You got any proof? I didn't, he left, said they'd patrol the area more frequently. I knew they wouldn't. The county inspector showed up on Thursday. Said there'd been an anonymous complaint about unpermitted construction. He poked around for 2 hours, found nothing wrong, but he left me with a written warning about ongoing monitoring. More harassment, more pressure. Then it escalated. I came to the cabin Friday morning and found the front door kicked in. Lock broken, door hanging crooked on its hinges. My chest went tight, I stepped inside carefully, looked around, nothing stolen, TV still on the wall. My grandfather's old tools in the shed untouched, but the place was trashed. Furniture overturned, drawers dumped out. Photos of my grandfather smashed on the floor, glass everywhere. And on the living room wall, spray painted in black, leave. I called the sheriff again. Deputy Miller came back, took more photos, same speech about probably being kids. This is targeted harassment, I said. The HOA president is behind this. You have any proof? She threatened me 3 days ago. Told me she'd make my life hell. Threatening words aren't evidence of breaking and entering unless you got witnesses or cameras. He trailed off. I didn't have cameras, yet that afternoon I drove to the hardware store. Bought 6 security cameras, mounted them all over the property, every angle covered. If someone came back, I'd have them on video. I slept at the cabin that night. Didn't tell anyone, just me and a baseball bat. Around 2 a.m. I heard footsteps on the porch. My heart hammered. I grabbed the bat, stayed quiet, whispered voices outside, 2 men, maybe 3, check the back door. What if he's inside? He's not, his truck's gone. They were wrong. I'd parked down the road, walked back, they tried the door handle. It rattled. I flipped on every light in the cabin at once, pressed my face against the window. I've got a shotgun and 911 is already on the line. I didn't have a shotgun. But they didn't know that. Running footsteps, crashing through bushes, I threw open the door, chased them to the road, caught a glimpse of taillights disappearing around the bend. White Mercedes, new model, expensive, Patricia's car. I stood in the middle of the dark road, breathing hard, she'd just crossed a line. The next morning I called David Brennan, we need to go on a fence. What happened? I told him everything. The vandalism, the break-in. The men on my porch. David was quiet for a long moment. File a police report, document everything, then we sue. For what? Everything, harassment, trespass, interference with property rights. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. We name the HOA as an entity and Patricia Whitmore personally. Personally, she's acting outside her authority as HOA president. This is personal vendetta. We pierce the corporate veil and go after her directly. My hands tightened on the phone. Do it. David's voice went sharp with satisfaction. This is going to get ugly, Jake. She's going to fight back hard. Are you ready? I thought about my grandfather, about the cabin, about Patricia's smile when she threatened to take everything. I'm ready. Good, I'll have the complaint drafted by Monday. We filed Tuesday morning. I hung up. Stood on the porch looking out at the lake. The water was calm, morning sun turning it gold. Patricia Whitmore wanted war, she was about to get it, and she had no idea that when the lawsuit hit it would expose everything. The lies. The corruption, the fact that she'd known about my grandfather's land rights all along. The bomb was armed, now we just had to drop it. The lawsuit hit like a nuclear weapon. We filed Tuesday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, every homeowner in Pine Ridge had received a copy. Required by law, they were potentially affected parties. My phone started ringing immediately. Angry voices, scared voices. People demanding to know if they were going to lose their homes. I explained the situation carefully, over and over. I wasn't suing them. I was suing Patricia and the HOA for harassment. But yes, the underlying land rights issue was part of the case. By Wednesday, the HOA called an emergency meeting. I wasn't invited, but I showed up anyway. The community center was packed, standing room only, voices raised. People shouting over each other. Patricia stood at the front table. Her pink blazer looked wrinkled, hair not quite as perfect, stress visible around her eyes. I walked through the door. The room went silent, every head turned. 47 families staring at me like I was the devil. Patricia's eyes narrowed. You're not welcome here. I held up my copy of the lawsuit. This affects everyone in this room. They deserve to hear the truth. A man in the back stood up. Mid-40s, flannel shirt, work boots. What truth? That you're trying to steal our homes? Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. I walked to the front, stood facing them. I'm not trying to steal anything. I'm trying to stop Patricia from stealing from me. That's a lie. Patricia slammed her hand on the table. I ignored her, focused on the crowd. My grandfather bought land rights to this subdivision in 1978. Legal purchase, public record. He never told anyone because he didn't want to cause trouble. He just wanted to live in peace. I pulled out copies of the deeds, started passing them around. Patricia knew about this. Her late husband was the original developer's attorney. He helped facilitate the sale. She's known for years that my family owned this land. An elderly woman in the third row, Margaret, took a deed, started reading. Her face went pale. Is this real? You can verify it at the county clerk's office. Everything's on file. Patricia stood, her voice shook. He's manipulating you. This is all a scam to extort money. I turned to her. Then explain Summit Holdings. The room went quiet. Explain why you brought a real estate investment firm to my property, why they offered me $800,000. Why you were standing there with them. Patricia's face flushed red. I was protecting this community. By selling them out, I pulled out another document. Summit Holdings specializes in luxury redevelopment. They buy properties, evict residents, and build high-end condos. That's public information available on their website. Gasps from the crowd. A woman stood up. Patricia, is that true? Did you make a deal with them? Another voice called. Patricia's control started cracking. She looked around at faces that used to trust her. I have protected this community for 15 years. I've kept property values high. I've maintained standards. And you're going to believe this. This outsider over me? Margaret stood slowly. Her voice was quiet but firm. Patricia, did you know about the land rights? Silence. Answer the question, someone else said. Patricia's hands were shaking. Her perfect mask finally shattered. Yes, fine, I knew. Gerald told me before he died, but I was protecting you. If this got out, property values would tank, title insurance would fail, nobody could sell their homes. So you tried to steal Jake's cabin instead? Margaret asked. I was going to fix this quietly, buy the land rights myself, then transfer them to the HOA. With what money? A man shouted. Patricia didn't answer, because the truth was obvious. She was going to use Summit Holdings' money. Take a cut for herself, then spin some story about saving the neighborhood. The room erupted, voices overlapping, anger building. You've been lying to us for years. How much were you getting from Summit? I want your resignation. Patricia grabbed her purse. Her perfect composure completely gone. Fine, you want him, deal with him yourselves. She shoved through the crowd, slammed through the exit doors. Gone. I stood at the front of the room, 47 families staring at me. Margaret spoke first. What do you want from us? I took a breath. The same thing I offered Patricia. I'll sell you the land rights back. Original purchase price adjusted for inflation, about $3,000 per property. I'll grant permanent easements for the lake access. Everyone keeps their homes, everything gets properly titled, we all move forward. And if we can't afford it, we'll work out payment plans. This isn't about money. It's about making things right. An older man in the back stood. Why should we trust you? Fair question. Because my grandfather could have done this any time in the last 40 years. He could have evicted you, charged rent, sold to developers. He let you live here in peace because that's who he was. I paused. I'm trying to honor that, but I'm also not going to let Patricia Whitmore steal my family's property. Those are my only two goals. Margaret looked around the room, then back at me. We need to elect a new HOA board, people who'll negotiate in good faith. Nods of agreement. Give us 2 weeks, she said. We'll organize. Then we'll talk. Fair? I nodded. Fair. I walked out of that community center feeling lighter than I had in weeks. The war wasn't over, but the battlefield had shifted, and Patricia Whitmore just lost her army. I thought it was over. I was wrong. 2 days after the meeting, I pulled up to the cabin and knew something was off. The security cameras were gone, all 6 of them ripped from their mounts, wires dangling. My stomach dropped. I checked the recordings on my phone app. Footage stopped at 3 a.m., someone in a dark hoodie. Face covered, they knew exactly where the cameras were. This was professional. I went inside. Everything looked normal at first. Then I saw the kitchen, every cabinet door open. Food scattered across the floor, refrigerator unplugged, contents spoiling, but nothing broken, nothing stolen, just chaos, just a message. I called David Brennan. They're escalating. Who? Patricia. Or whoever she hired. Can you prove it? That word again. Proof? I couldn't. The camera footage was gone, no witnesses, no evidence. What do I do? David's voice went hard. You document everything. You install new cameras, hidden ones this time, and you stay vigilant. People like Patricia get desperate when they're cornered. He was right. That night I installed 8 new cameras, smaller, better hidden, motion-activated, cloud backup. I also bought a deadbolt for the door. And yes, a real shotgun this time. If they came back, I'd be ready. 3 nights passed, nothing happened. I started to relax. Started to think maybe Patricia had finally given up. Then my truck wouldn't start. I popped the hood. Someone had cut every belt, slashed hoses, poured something into the oil reservoir looked like sand. $1,500 in damage. I checked the new cameras. Footage from 4 a.m. showed a figure in dark clothes. Different person than before. Face covered. They knew the camera locations again. Someone was watching me, learning my patterns. This wasn't random vandalism anymore. This was surveillance. Intimidation, psychological warfare. I called Deputy Miller again. He came out, same speech about needing proof. Look at the pattern, I said. This is systematic harassment. I understand you're frustrated. Someone is destroying my property. Without evidence linking it to a specific person, there's nothing we can do. I'm sorry. He left. I stood in the driveway, rage building in my chest. Patricia was untouchable. She had money, connections. She could hire people to do her dirty work and never leave a trace. That night I didn't sleep, just sat in the dark cabin with the shotgun across my lap, watching, waiting. Around midnight I heard something, not footsteps, something else. Scratching at the back wall, I grabbed a flashlight, moved to the window. Someone was there, crouched by the foundation, doing something. I threw open the back door, aimed the flashlight and shotgun together. Freeze, the figure ran. Disappeared into the trees. I moved to where they'd been crouched. There was a small propane tank, valve open, gas hissing out, and a timer, digital, counting down 7 minutes. My blood went cold. They were going to blow up the cabin. With me inside, I shut off the valve, grabbed the timer, threw it in the lake. Then I called 911. This time they took it seriously. Sheriff's deputies, fire department. Bomb squad drove up from the county seat. They confirmed it. Improvised incendiary device. Would have caused an explosion, probably burned the cabin to the ground. Deputy Miller looked at me differently now. Someone's trying to kill you. Patricia Whitmore. We'll investigate. But Jake, he hesitated. You need to be somewhere else tonight, somewhere safe. I shook my head. This is my property. I'm not leaving. But after they left, I sat on the porch in the dark and realized something. Patricia had crossed from harassment into attempted murder. She was completely unhinged, and I couldn't prove it was her. Unless, I called David at 2 a.m. We need to go nuclear now. What happened? I told him about the bomb. Silence on the line, then, oh my God. Can we use this? Force her hand. Jake, this is a criminal matter now. The sheriff needs proof. We have something better. What? We have motive, we have pattern, and we have discovery. If we amend the lawsuit to include attempted murder conspiracy, we can subpoena her phone records, her financial records, find out who she hired. David thought about it. It's aggressive. But yeah, we can do it. I'll file an emergency motion tomorrow. I hung up, stared at the lake. Patricia tried to kill me, and now I was going to destroy her. Legally, completely, permanently, the gloves were off. The emergency hearing was set for Friday morning. Small courtroom, wood paneling. Judge Richardson presiding, older woman, silver hair, reputation for no-nonsense rulings. I sat at the plaintiff's table with David. Behind us, a dozen Pine Ridge residents. They'd come to watch. Margaret was there, others too, people who'd started to see Patricia for what she really was. Patricia sat across the aisle with her attorney, expensive suit, slicked back hair, legal mercenary named Robert Chen. She looked different, thinner, hair not as perfect, but her red dress was immaculate. Armor, she wouldn't look at me. Judge Richardson entered, we all stood. Be seated. Mr. Brennan, you filed an emergency motion to amend your complaint. Explain, David stood. Your Honor, 3 nights ago someone attempted to firebomb my client's property with him inside. Sheriff's Department confirms it was an improvised incendiary device. We have reason to believe the defendant, Patricia Whitmore, is directly responsible. Gasps from the gallery. Patricia's attorney shot to his feet. Your Honor, that's an outrageous accusation with zero evidence. I'm not finished, David said calmly. He pulled out documents. We're requesting emergency discovery. Miss Whitmore's phone records, financial statements, and correspondence for the past 60 days. We believe they'll show a pattern of harassment culminating in attempted murder. Judge Richardson looked at Patricia. Miss Whitmore, is there any truth to these allegations? Patricia stood. Her voice was steady, cold. Absolutely not, Your Honor. Mr. Morrison is creating a false narrative to justify his attempted extortion of our community. Extortion? The judge's eyebrow raised. He claims to own land beneath our homes. He's demanding payment. When we refused, he fabricated this harassment story to pressure us. David stood again. Your Honor, Mr. Morrison has offered to sell the land rights at the original 1978 purchase price. That's not extortion, that's extraordinary generosity. Meanwhile, Miss Whitmore brought a corporate developer to his property offering $800,000. She was planning to sell out the entire neighborhood. That's a lie, Patricia's composure cracked. I have witnesses, David said. Mr. Morrison isn't the only one who was there. Judge Richardson held up her hand. Enough, here's what's going to happen. I'm granting limited discovery. Miss Whitmore, you'll produce your phone records and a sworn affidavit detailing all communications regarding Mr. Morrison's property. You have 72 hours. Patricia's attorney started to object. The judge cut him off. 72 hours, and Miss Whitmore, if I find out you've destroyed evidence, I'll hold you in contempt. Understood? Patricia's face went white. Yes, Your Honor. We filed out of the courtroom. Margaret caught up with me in the hallway. Jake, I need to tell you something. What? She looked around, lowered her voice. Patricia came to my house last week, tried to get me to sign an affidavit saying you threatened residents at the HOA meeting. Offered me money, my jaw tightened. Did you sign? Of course not, but she approached others too. I don't know who might have taken her offer. Would you testify to that? Margaret nodded. I'm done protecting her. We all are. Over the next 3 days, Patricia's world collapsed. The phone records came back, dozens of calls to unlisted numbers, burner phones, then financial records showed cash withdrawals, $20,000 over 6 weeks. All ATM transactions. No paper trail, but there was more. David's investigator found something else. Patricia's late husband, Gerald Whitmore, had left a letter sealed with his attorney. Instructions to open it only if Patricia ever tried to claim the Morrison land. Mary at the county clerk's office had the letter. She'd been holding it for 20 years. David brought it to me at the cabin. You need to read this. I opened the envelope, Gerald's handwriting, dated 1997. The letter was an apology and a warning. Gerald explained everything. How he'd helped Jake's grandfather buy the land in 1978, how it was legal and proper, how he'd advised the developer to let it go. Then he wrote about Patricia. How she'd pressured him to find a way to take the Morrison property, how she'd become obsessed with it, how she saw it as the key to controlling the entire neighborhood. Gerald refused, so Patricia started planning, waiting, biding her time until he died and she could act alone. The letter ended with a plea. If you're reading this, it means Patricia has tried to take what isn't hers. Please stop her. For the sake of the community, for the sake of justice. She's not the woman I married anymore. She's something else, something dangerous. I set the letter down. Can we use this? David nodded. It's admissible, it's devastating, and it proves she's known about the land rights all along. Everything she said in court has been perjury. When do we file? Tomorrow morning, emergency motion, we're going to bury her. That night I couldn't sleep, not from fear, from anticipation. Patricia Whitmore had tried to steal my property, tried to destroy my family's legacy, tried to kill me, and tomorrow she was going to pay for all of it. The amended complaint hit like a bomb. Patricia's perjury, the letter from her dead husband, the pattern of harassment, the attempted arson, all of it laid out in 40 pages of legal precision. David also filed a motion for sanctions and a referral to the district attorney for criminal investigation. Patricia's attorney withdrew that afternoon. Conflict of interest. He wasn't going to risk his license defending someone who'd lied to him. Patricia showed up to the next hearing alone. No lawyer, no backup, just her in a pink dress that looked like it hadn't been pressed. Hair pulled back in a hasty ponytail. She looked 10 years older than 2 weeks ago. Judge Richardson entered. Her expression was granite. Miss Whitmore, I've reviewed the amended complaint and the new evidence. Do you have legal representation? No, Your Honor. I couldn't find anyone willing to take my case. Her voice was small, defeated. I'm not surprised. Miss Whitmore, did you or did you not have knowledge of the Morrison family's land ownership when you initiated foreclosure proceedings against Mr. Morrison? Silence. Answer the question. Patricia looked at me. For the first time since this started, I saw something other than hatred in her eyes, fear. Yes, she whispered. I knew. The courtroom erupted. Judge Richardson banged her gavel. Order. Miss Whitmore, you committed perjury in this courtroom. You made false statements under oath. You've also been implicated in a harassment campaign that culminated in attempted arson. Your Honor, I never told anyone to. The phone records and financial statements suggest otherwise. $20,000 in untraceable cash withdrawals. Calls to burner phones. Text messages to unknown numbers containing Mr. Morrison's address and schedule. Patricia started crying, real tears, makeup running down her face. I just wanted to protect the neighborhood, she sobbed. Property values would have collapsed. People couldn't sell their homes. I was trying to fix it. By stealing someone else's property, Judge Richardson's voice was ice. By attempting to burn down a man's home with him inside. I never meant for, Miss Whitmore, here's what's going to happen. Your countersuit is dismissed with prejudice. You're ordered to pay Mr. Morrison's legal fees, which currently total $87,000. The HOA you led is dissolved effective immediately, and I'm referring this matter to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. Patricia collapsed into her chair. Additionally, the judge continued, you're permanently enjoined from serving on any homeowners association board in the state. You're barred from entering Mr. Morrison's property. And if you violate any of these orders, I'll hold you in contempt and you'll go to jail. Do you understand? Patricia nodded, couldn't speak. This court is adjourned. The gavel came down, it was over. Patricia stood slowly. Grabbed her purse, walked toward the exit. She passed me in the aisle, our eyes met. I saw everything in that moment. The rage, the humiliation, the complete destruction of everything she'd built. She'd lost her position, her reputation. Her control, her freedom, all because she tried to steal something that wasn't hers. She didn't say anything, just walked out. I watched her go. David put a hand on my shoulder. You won. But it didn't feel like winning. It felt like justice. The district attorney moved fast. Within a week, Patricia was charged. Fraud, conspiracy, solicitation of arson, 6 felony counts. She took a plea deal, probably smart. A trial would have destroyed her completely. 3 years probation, $50,000 in restitution, community service, permanent ban from any HOA leadership position in the United States, and she had to leave Pine Ridge. The neighborhood threw a party the day she moved out. I wasn't invited, didn't expect to be, but Margaret called me the next day. Jake, we've formed a new HOA board, actual elected leadership this time. We want to negotiate the land purchase. I'm listening. We hired a real estate attorney, independent appraiser. We want to do this right, fair for everyone. We met the following week, conference room at the attorney's office. Margaret and 4 other board members, all reasonable people, all exhausted from years under Patricia's control. The appraiser confirmed everything. The 1978 purchase was legal. Current fair market value for the land rights was approximately $280,000 total. I could have demanded that, could have made a fortune. Instead, I stuck to my original offer, original purchase price plus inflation. Split between 47 properties, roughly $3,000 per house. Why? One of the board members asked. You could ask for more. I thought about my grandfather, about his quiet integrity, because this isn't about money. It's about making things right. My grandfather could have evicted all of you 40 years ago. He didn't. I'm not going to dishonor his memory by being greedy now. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. Your grandfather would be proud of you. We signed the agreements that day. Payment plans worked out for families who needed them. Permanent easements granted for lake access. Everything properly titled and recorded. Finally. After 2 months of hell, it was actually over. I drove back to the cabin that evening. The sun was setting over the lake, orange and gold reflecting off the water. I stood on the dock, my grandfather's dock, saved from destruction, and just breathed. The community was healing. Families could stay in their homes. Patricia was gone, justice was served, but there was still one more thing I needed to do. I went inside, found the box of my grandfather's personal papers. Started sorting through decades of memories. Near the bottom, I found an envelope, my name written on the front in his handwriting. I opened it with shaking hands. Jake, if you're reading this, someone probably tried to take what's ours. I smiled. He knew, he always knew. The letter continued, don't fight out of anger, fight for what's right, protect the weak, be better than they are. Power isn't about controlling others. It's about having strength and choosing not to use it unless you have to. I bought that land to protect these families, not to lord over them. I hope you'll do the same. Make me proud, son, Dad. I folded the letter carefully. Put it in my wallet. My grandfather didn't just leave me property, he left me a purpose, a responsibility, a legacy worth fighting for. The next morning, I started rebuilding, repairing the damage from Patricia's harassment, restoring the cabin to what it once was. But I also started planning something bigger, a scholarship fund in my grandfather's name for local kids who wanted to study law or social justice. Because the world needed more people willing to stand up to bullies, more people willing to fight for what's right even when it's hard, more people like William Morrison, and maybe, just maybe, I was becoming one of them. 3 months after the plea deal, I got a call from Margaret. "Jake, you should know, Patricia's house just sold. She's leaving town for good, moving to Florida." I didn't feel triumphant, didn't feel anything really. Just relief that it was truly finished. "How's the neighborhood?" Margaret's voice brightened. "Better, so much better. People are talking to each other again. We're planning a community barbecue next month. You should come. Maybe I will." I hung up and looked around the cabin. It was finished now. New dock repaired, fresh paint, security system installed, real ones this time. But more than that, it felt like home again. The phone rang again. David Brennan this time. "Jake, I've got news. Patricia's restitution payments started coming in. She sold her house to cover it." "How much?" "All 50,000 plus your legal fees. It's over." "Completely over." I thanked him and ended the call. That weekend, I invited the new HOA board to the cabin, showed them the old photos, told them stories about my grandfather, about how he bought the land not for profit but to prevent a corporate takeover even back in the 70s. They listened, really listened. "He was protecting us even then," Margaret said quietly. "Before we even lived here. That's who he was." We spent the afternoon on the dock, drinking coffee, watching boats on the lake, planning the future of Pine Ridge together this time. As they left, Margaret hugged me. "You could have destroyed us all, Jake. You had every legal right, but you chose your grandfather's way instead. It was the only way." That night, alone again, I sat on the porch and thought about everything that happened. Patricia tried to take my home using lies and intimidation. She corrupted an entire HOA board. She terrorized good people for years. And when I fought back, she escalated to violence. But here's what she never understood. Real power isn't about control, it's about choice. I had the power to evict 47 families, to sell their land rights for hundreds of thousands, to destroy the community out of spite. I chose not to. That's the difference between people like Patricia and people like my grandfather. She used power as a weapon. He used it as a shield. I thought about Gerald Whitmore's letter, about how Patricia had transformed from the woman he married into something dangerous, something consumed by control and status. I wondered if she'd ever find peace, ever understand what she'd lost. Probably not. People like that rarely do. But that wasn't my problem anymore. My problem was honoring my grandfather's legacy, protecting this place, building something good from the ashes of Patricia's corruption. The lake was dark now, stars reflecting on the surface. I went inside, locked the door, turned off the lights. For the first time in 3 months, I slept soundly. No nightmares, no anxiety, no fear, just peace. The next morning, I woke to sunlight streaming through the windows. I made coffee, stood on the dock, watched a family of ducks glide across the water. This was what my grandfather fought for. This quiet, this beauty, this home, and now it was mine to protect for the next generation. For the families in Pine Ridge who could finally live without fear. For everyone who'd ever been bullied by someone with a little bit of power and no conscience. Patricia Whitmore was gone, but the lesson remained. Stand up, fight back. Do it legally, do it smart, but never ever let someone steal what's yours, especially when it's your family's honor and legacy. That's the Morrison way, and I was damn proud to carry that name. 6 months later, the cabin was exactly how I remembered it from childhood. Blue paint restored, the original color, not HOA approved. Dock rebuilt with the same design my grandfather used in 1952. Oak trees standing tall, everything perfect, but better than perfect. It was alive again. I'd moved up here full-time, started a small contracting business in town. Word spread about what happened with Patricia. People respected it. Respected me. The community barbecue Margaret mentioned, it became a monthly thing, 50 families gathering at the community center. Kids running around, adults sharing stories, laughter replacing fear. I went to everyone. They'd started calling the cabin the Morrison place again, said it with pride instead of resentment. A monument to standing your ground without becoming what you fight against. One Saturday afternoon, Margaret showed up at the cabin with a box. "Found this in the old HOA storage unit, thought you should have it." Inside were photos, decades old, my grandfather at community events, building the dock. Helping neighbors, always there, always steady. One photo showed him shaking hands with James Hartwell, the original developer, both men smiling. Back when Pine Ridge was just dirt roads and possibility, I pinned it to the wall. A reminder that good people can work together, can build something lasting. Patricia could have been part of that, could have been a leader who protected instead of controlled, served instead of dominated. She chose differently, and it cost her everything. But here's what I learned. Evil doesn't win when good people stand up. Not when you fight smart, not when you use the law, not when you refuse to stoop to their level. Patricia tried to destroy me with lies, harassment, and violence. I destroyed her with truth, documentation, and patience. That's how you win. That's how you honor people like my grandfather. The scholarship fund launched last month. First recipient was a Pine Ridge kid named Tommy Martinez. Wants to study civil rights law, plans to fight for people who can't fight for themselves. I shook his hand at the award ceremony, saw fire in his eyes. The same fire my grandfather must have had when he stood up to developers in the 60s. When he quietly bought that land to protect families he'd never meet. Legacy isn't what you own, it's what you protect, what you pass forward, what you inspire in others. My grandfather left me land. But more importantly, he left me purpose. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving I was worthy of it. Last week I got a letter, no return address, postmarked Florida. I almost threw it away, but curiosity won. Inside a single sentence in Patricia's handwriting, "You were right, I'm sorry." I stared at those words for a long time, then I burned the letter, watched it turn to ash. Some people change, some don't. Either way, it wasn't my burden to carry anymore. I walked down to the dock. Sunset painting the lake gold and crimson. Somewhere in the distance, a loon called, the sound my grandfather loved. I smiled, felt him with me somehow, proud. At peace, this cabin stood for almost 80 years, survived corruption, survived greed, survived someone trying to burn it down out of pure spite. It survived because of integrity, because someone refused to let evil win, because one man chose to be better. And now that responsibility was mine. I sat on the dock until stars filled the sky. The Morrison legacy wasn't just land or buildings or legal documents. It was the choice to fight for what's right, to protect the vulnerable, to win without becoming the monster. That's the lesson, that's what I'm passing forward, and that's why I'm telling you this story, because somewhere right now someone's dealing with their own Patricia Whitmore, some HOA tyrant, some corrupt authority figure, some bully with a little power and no soul. And they need to know you can win, legally, completely, without compromising who you are. Document everything, build your case, stay calm, stay smart. Use the system against them, and never ever back down when you know you're right. That's the Morrison way. The lake is quiet tonight, peaceful, home. Tomorrow I'll wake up and keep building, keep protecting, keep honoring my grandfather's legacy. Because that's what good men do. They stand their ground, they fight clean, and they win. If this story inspired you, if you've ever faced someone like Patricia Whitmore, if you believe good people can still win, drop a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from, share your own HOA horror story. Let's build a community of people who refuse to be victims, who stand up, who fight back, who win the right way. Because stories like this, they need to be told. They need to be shared. They need to remind people that justice still exists if you're brave enough to fight for it. Welcome to the Morrison legacy. Let's keep it alive together.